All right. We'll get started. All right, so leading up to tonight, we have covered kind of the pre-Islam period, and we covered it pretty quickly, and we're going to cover the rise of Islam in general pretty quickly, the rise and also the political expansion, and then we'll start to slow down after this session and get a little more in depth. So tonight's class is Muhammad and the rise of Islam. This happens in the 600 AD time frame. What you'll see is there is a waning of some world powers at this time, which creates a vacuum. This vacuum allows for this fledgling religion to become one of the dominant religions in the world that we have today. It is a new religion. It becomes also a political power, and it is also known as Islam. So these are some things that we'll cover. We'll get on into it. So, Middle East in 1600. The time in 1600, you have the Persian Empire here. You have the Roman Empire. Technically, it's no longer the Roman Empire. It is the Byzantine Empire. Rome, by now, has been sacked multiple times, and now we have Constantinople, and we have the waning power that is Rome. And these two are at odds, and they're constantly fighting. And because of, again, we talked about the geographical definition of the Middle East and the protection that the seas and the mountains create and the desert, the area in which Islam is born and grows is kind of protected from these two world powers that are going at it and the natural geography of the area. Okay, so just to give you a little context in this before things start to heat up. Okay, Islam. Okay, Islam is created or manifest through a Bedouin Arab named Muhammad. He comes from a clan or tribe. If you'd read the text for tonight, you get a lot of this background, but I figured you hadn't received the text quite yet, so we'll cover most of it in class. He's born in 57 AD. He is of the Hassanite clan, not the most powerful clan, not the weakest clan. Kind of think middle class, right in the middle, okay? He's not part of the ruling elite. He's also not part of a poor bottom class. The Quraysh tribe is the one that dominates. They are the upper class. They are the controlling class. They are the controlling tribe of Mecca and the area that I showed in the map before. They not only control the trade, but they also control the religion at the time. The religion at the time, and you'll see a little bit more of this later, is really centered around a polytheistic, which you should know from previous histories, it means a multitude of gods, poly meaning more than one. So a religion that is centered around many gods, and it's around the Kaaba, which is the black rock that's there. And so they actually have a monopoly of religious experience. Okay, so this tribe owns or controls Mecca, and they control the shrine that's at the center of Mecca. And so they not only dominate the trade, but they also, in a sense, dominate the hearts and minds of the people because they control the religion of the time. Remember last class when we talked about the growth of early civilization, one of the profound jumps in early civilization to more modern civilization is the jump from the idea of polytheism to monotheism. Okay, most of the major world religions now are monotheistic. Whether you believe in them or not, there still are some that are polytheistic. But the idea that religions are born out of the idea of why. Why does the sun go across the sky? Why does the grass grow? Why? And in early man's time, the idea was, well, it must be a God, because I can't explain it. Okay? So that's where the birth of polytheism comes from, is man's attempt to understand the world it lives in. And so then the next jump is, well, there aren't many gods. There's just one God, because the world is too complex to just say there's not one, that it's just something that is random. But it's too simple to say, well, each little thing has its own God. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so remember we talked about prior to tonight that you have the birth of Judaism, you have the birth of Christianity. Those are monotheistic. They predate Islam. So this is not a new concept, but it is kind of a new concept to this region, to this area. And so we'll get into that. He is, by the age of 6, orphaned. His father dies first. His mother dies when he's 6. He goes to live with his grandfather, who then dies. And he goes to live then with an uncle who does not care for him all that much. He takes care of him, feeds him, clothes him, gives him a certain level of education. But he is very much so an outsider, and actually in the clan structure, he's unable to find a job within his own uncle's, enterprises. And so he has to then search out another way to make ends meet. But he is raised not by his parents, but by an uncle in Mecca. Muhammad himself, formal education, we're not sure. At the same time, normally, only the poets and scribes were educated at this time. We believe that Muhammad was educated to a degree because he came from a middle-class family. He probably had a lower grades or elementary education, enough to read, enough to write, but he's not going to write, the next great novel. Okay, he's not a scribe, but he does have, probably if you take Muhammad and put him in a schooling situation where he had access, he probably would have excelled. He had the ability. Okay, so soon he realizes that he's not going to make a living in his uncle's house, and so he actually searches for a job elsewhere, and he ends up being hired by a widow. As you can see, her name is Kajad. Kajad has been married twice. She has multiple children by her previous husbands. She is older than Muhammad. She sees that Muhammad has a talent. He has the ability to trade and talk to others, and does a very good job. So first he's hired as a hand, as someone in her business. She has wealth because of the wealth of her dead husbands. At this time that's unusual because most women at the time could not own property or grow a business, but she has, kind of lucked out and that her husbands die and leave her means. And so she is wealthy and she is in the trading business, and Muhammad thrives under this business. Okay, he supervises caravans from Mecca going north to Jerusalem. This is important because he is in contact, because of these caravans, with both Jews and Christians. And again, why is that important? What do we know about Jews and Christians and their religion?
They have the same God.
They have the same God. They have the idea of one God. They have the idea of a more enlightened understanding of what God is, or what religion is, and the power of religion. What do we know about the Jews and the power of the Jews in terms of their religion? Who was the famous king in David? Yeah, let's go back to, if you went to church, you should remember this. Okay? If you didn't, we should do a class on that. But David is King David. Okay? As a historical king, powerful king. But beyond that, the Jews are known for their ability to stay together as a group. And their history is profound to them. Okay? They hold on to it greatly. So because they've lasted millennium, this group. So think if you're a young clan tribesman from nowhere, Arabia, and you come into contact with these Jews who have a higher concept of God, who have a higher concept of community, who have a history that dates back thousands of years, that can make an effect, and a profound effect on a young, intelligent man who may want to change his station in life, who has something to learn because he has no family to tie to, because he's lost his parents. He's not really welcome in his own house to a certain degree. He's entrepreneurial and really wants to kind of raise his station. So these Jews are interesting people to him. So then you go from the Jews and we go to the Christians. What do we know about the Christians by 600 AD? Is it just the 12? Is it just a little story about Jesus of Nazareth? No, by 600 AD, who is Christian? The Roman Empire. Okay, now, granted, the Roman Empire is in its waning years, but everybody knows the Romans. They are, at one time, dominators and controllers of the world, the known world, the entire Mediterranean. You got to get out of the concept of knowing that there are, so many oceans in a world. At the time, the Mediterranean was the ocean. It was the seat of mankind. They didn't know much away from the Mediterranean. This one culture, this one group, under the shield of Christianity by this time, dominated the world. So again, I'm a young, impressionable man searching for maybe a future, and I see these two groups that through their religion and through their faith and through their history have come to either dominate the world or been able to survive for such a long time and have this bond. Now, you have to look at where he lived at the time. At the time, you had these small clans, and if you weren't part of the tribe and you weren't part of the clan, I don't care about you. It's all about me and my people. I don't care about your people. I don't care about your clan. We may grow up right next to each other. I'm from this group, you're from that group, we're going to get ours. But these two transcend that. They're bigger. I'm sure it made an impression. And then at the foundation of it, they both have something in common. As you said, they're both monotheistic. They believe in one God. In fact, they believe in the same God. And so that's... Muhammad probably doesn't become Muhammad, the prophet, if he doesn't come into contact with the Jews and the Christians. Okay? So it is very important that he does lose his family, that he does live with his uncle, that he does become future husband of this widow who is connected to the trade. It all falls together to create the new religion. Muhammad continued. He seems to have made an impression on his boss because of his reputation for honesty. Okay, he doesn't try to cheat. He doesn't try to gain things without working for it. He wants more. There's no doubt that he wants more, but he works hard for it. He's honest. So they are married, and he retires from commerce and becomes part of the house. Okay, so he then devotes himself at that point in time to religion. We're going to get into that in a second. He sees that there's something beyond this just making money thing. He also devotes his time to making society more fair and equitable. Muhammad has a problem with the inequities of Mecca, that there are haves and have-nots. There's the ruling class who dominate everything, and there's this middle class, and then there's this lower class. And he doesn't like the structure of society at this point in time. So what's interesting about Muhammad is that some of the concepts that you may have heard before about Islam is, the dying, going to heaven, and having many, virgins, and all the things that you may have heard. All the, some of that is conjecture, some of that is myth, some of that is propaganda. It's a lot of things. But if you look at Muhammad himself, he is actually monogamous until his wife dies. Remember, she's older than him. At the time, she's 15, up to 15 years. I'm not sure for certain, but it's thought that she's about 15 years older than him. Okay, so in 600 AD, or the 600s, 15 years is a long time. The average lifespan at that point in time, mid-40s. Okay, so you don't live to be 80, 90. At least most don't. Okay? So, he is monogamous up until that time. She does die. Rocks his world. Okay? Truly, probably the love of his life. Not just in a love that you may say, well, married. She took care of him. She allowed him to spend time to commune with God and grow spiritually. So she was really his soulmate and the one that helped him grow into who he was or became to be. So more than just a typical married couple, she was very important to him. So after she dies, he ends up marrying 9 wives and has lots of concubines. Now, that is a slight misnomer. It's not that he said, whew, okay, the wife's gone, now it's time to party. That is not the case here, okay? Although I am sure he may have, taken advantage of the fruits of his marriages and whatnot, as a man might. Most of these are out of others passing away and women that are not taken care of and feeling that if he brings them into his house, he can take care of them. Okay? Muhammad was a very magnanimous, very caring person. He wanted to help people. Okay? So you got to remember, at this time, most of these women are vulnerable because they are widows of friends or political marriages. So either he's trying to gain some political influence, or one of his friends died because, again, remember 600 AD, people die every day, okay, and there's not a hospital to go to, okay, and they're left without the ability to be taken care of, and he says, well, the husband's died, why don't you marry me and move into my house, okay? So, although it looks like, this guy who's got power and he's just women and everything, it's not necessarily the case. Okay, he's actually trying to protect these people. Okay, his last marriage is at 53, okay, which is to a daughter of his friend. Again, more than likely, this is I'll take care of her. I have power and influence, not necessarily just one more, woman in the harem kind of situation. Okay, the origin of Muhammad's teachings. Now, you will never see me in class take on one religion over another. I will give you the facts, okay? I'm not here to tell you what to believe. So, in terms of Muhammad and his teachings, there are some theories about what happened. He has periods of unconsciousness that through these he experiences talking to God and talking to Allah through Gabriel. Now, some have said that maybe these were seizures of some sort, or some kind of trance of some sort. But Muhammad's explanation is that he is being given this knowledge by God. They are revelations from God. Okay? But one of the things to know about these is that they are painful. They are unpleasant. And that has led to some people to believe that they were psychosomatic in some form or fashion, that they were a seizure of some sort. Now, again, I don't pretend to know all things. Were these seizures the means by which God talks to Muhammad? Could be. Okay? But this is the state. It wasn't that he just said, hey, guess what, guys? God talked to me today. No, he would go, he would meditate, he would have these experiences, he would have people around him, they would see him go into this state. So this is an explanation of kind of what happened at the time when he would receive these words, or these revelations from God. Okay? These holy trances. The Quran. The Quran is a record of the revelations received during the visions. So there's two different groups now. There's the Quran. The Quran were things that were written down as soon as he came out of the trances, and he would tell people what he heard or what was said to him. They would write it down, and that became the Quran. Okay? there is also the Hadith, and we'll talk about it in a second. But the Quran was committed to writing in 650 AD. You see when he died, 632. So you understand that it is a verbal, message that was shared amongst his closest followers. He would come out of this trance, his disciples, his believers would be there, and he would say, God spoke to me, and here's what he says. This is what he said to me. This is something we should do. And so they would listen to these things, and then once Muhammad died, basically 18 years later, somebody said, we really need to write this stuff down. We were all there. We all listened to him say these things, but it's 18 years later, and they probably didn't say, and we live in 650, there aren't any hospitals, most of us are going to die soon, but they realized life was short. We needed to write these things down if they were going to last. So they wrote the things down that Muhammad had in his visions, but they also wrote down the hadith. The hadith were things that Muhammad said you should do, not that God said you should do, but that Muhammad said. So he would have these visions and they would be shared, and then he would go home. And in going home and live his life, and come into contact with other people, and people would ask him questions, and he would say, well, this is what I think. Well, because he's a prophet, because he is the one given these revelations, they'd also say, well, maybe they're not the word of God, but they are the words of someone who lives a godly life. So we need to write them down. So think of it in this way, for Islam and the Muslims, the Quran is the Bible, The Hadith was more of the words, I think of it this way. The Quran are the words of Jesus, They're the red line words. Because if you believe in the Christian faith that Jesus was God, then it's not God speaking through Jesus, it's just God speaking, because they're one and the same, the Trinity, all that. Well, he never professes to be holy, or son of God or anything. He says, I am man. I am going to die. I am no different than you in terms of being flesh and blood. He said he would say the only difference between me and you is that God speaks to me through my visions. And I'm just telling you what he says. And he may have thought, well, he'll speak to you maybe. But that's what makes us different. Jesus in history is different because he is the Son of God in the Christian faith. And so that is a stark difference, He never professes to be a Messiah or anything of that nature. So the red line words are the actual words of God. So the Quran are actually the things that God said to him. The New Testament are things that the disciples said, hey, this is what Jesus would do. It wasn't written down, Jesus said do this. It was, well, John lived with Jesus for 3 years, or Matthew, or whomever of the 12 lived with Jesus, and he said, you know what? This is how Jesus would handle it. Think of that as the hadith. This is how Muhammad would handle it. This is what Muhammad would do. Not necessarily what was spoken specifically in or from God in the Quran. So there is a difference between the two. And it plays an important factor later on, because in Islam there are two main groups. One doesn't necessarily hold to the hadith. They only hold to the Quran as the only thing that matters. We'll get into that. The nature of his revelations, they are diverse. It's not just about one thing. Sometimes it's about society or the social makeup of things, how people should treat one another. Sometimes it's about agriculture. Sometimes it's about medical issues. Sometimes it's about the military. Sometimes it deals with the cosmos and astronomical thoughts. So they varied. It wasn't just one specific revelation. They kind of are all over the place. So they vary in topic. All right, so the historical origins of his idea. Again, he is a Bedouin. These tribes are Bedouin. They are nomadic. Okay? They roam the Arabian Peninsula. And so he grows up in a society that is polytheistic. Again, meaning multiple gods. Okay? The idea of one God is traced back to Abraham. Hanifism is the belief in one God, okay, that idea, okay? And from that comes Judaism, and then you also have Christianity, which is Orthodox, Christian, and the Arianism, okay? So these are the growth of the one God idea, okay? And then you have Zoroastrianism, okay? Zoroaster was a man who believed in that there was one God and there's good and evil. He didn't profess to be a Messiah, but he professed to have this higher thought of man's situation and duality. Basically, he looked at the world and said there's good and there's evil. But there's one God, he created it all. Okay? And Zoroastrianism is a profound religion of early Persia, pre-Islam Persia. Okay? So again, you have those two warring major empires. You have the Romans and you have the Persians, both of which have a single God. Okay? And he comes into contact with these two great powers through trade. And it starts to shape him, as I said earlier. He starts to think there's got to be something to... I can look at where I've grown up, and this is kind of backwards, and we have these small groups, and nobody cares about each other. And then you have these large empires that have roads, and they have systems, and they are powerful. And he thinks, well, maybe there's something to this power that these empires have based on their faith. At about the age of 40, he starts to have a number of revelations. And then he starts to preach publicly. He continues to receive these revelations until his death. Again, they're usually related to current problems or concerns. And they are also religious in nature. They are political in nature. They are social and economic in nature. And that's important because, again, he believes and he connects with a group that is not in power. Very few of his followers. Some of them come from the very powerful families, but most of them come from the ones that are not part of the powerful family. They want to connect to something. Now, something that was said recently, and I actually believe this is true, someone said one of the ways to combat radical Islam is to provide jobs. Okay? Or you talk about ISIS, and they say, well, why does ISIS grow? And one way to combat that is to provide jobs. As far off as that sounds, because you can't just say, poof, here's a job. There's a long way between the theory of providing a job and application. I do think that the growth of radical Islam and ISIS in our current situation does come from a lack of a younger group being able to connect in society today and be able to take care of themselves or others or have a means. It's gang mentality. What makes a gang worth being a part of? They provide protection or the semblance of being a part of something. And because they provide this semblance of being a part of something, I will compromise myself. I think if you asked any gang member, if you could pull them out away from their gang and say, so do you really want to sell drugs? They might say, no, I don't really want to sell drugs, but I do it because it helps out the gang. They compromise their own moral compass to be a part of this group that may not have a moral compass. That's the whole idea in the gang. They get you in, they take care of you, they do things, and then they want something for it. Right? No different than what's going on with ISIS. Okay? Well, that's kind of where this comes from, in that Muhammad sees this disenfranchised group that that don't have a place. They can't move up socially. And he says, this is wrong. You should be able to move up socially. Why does he think that? Well, because he did himself. He married a widow who was wealthy, and he became so. And he was the outlier, but he had the idea that more people should be able to do that. Okay, so he would quite frequently have revelations on what does it mean to be moral, and how should each other treat one another, and then dealing with economy and the use of money. Again, we won't go into all the tenets of the religion. We're just going to do a very, very short version of what Islam is. This is not a religious class. It's a history class. But early on, it's not successful. Very few people in Mecca actually came to him. Why? Because he threatened the social and political and religious structure of the time. He wanted social equality. Most of the people who had the money said, no thanks. We like being on top. We don't want to give up our place. Okay? It threatened the economic basis of Mecca. Everything's going fine. Why would I want to upset the apple cart? Remember, the major clan controlled Mecca and the actual religious experience. They had that monopoly on the religion of the time, the polytheistic, around the Kaaba. And they said, we don't want this one God. We listen to this guy who talks to them. We've got a good thing going. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people come here and spend money to see this rock. Why would we want to change anything? Okay? So, it does not take off very well. Now, if you do know the Judeo-Christian background, one of the things that Jesus said was that a prophet rarely is successful in his own home. Why is that?
Always traveling.
Well, he's always traveling, but if I'm a prophet and I grew up here and you grew up with me, you may say, I remember when you used to, run around without a shirt on in your diaper. What makes you so important now, prophet? At home, people know me for the good and the bad, right? So Muhammad in Mecca, the people are like, I remember when you were just a whippersnapper and your parents died, you were eating scraps off your uncle's table. Well, now you're this high and mighty preacher. Okay, so it's very hard for him to kind of catch hold in Mecca because they go, I remember when you were nothing. Yeah, you married this woman and you got money because of her previous marriages and things. Good for you. But I remember when you were nothing. And you are nothing to me. So it doesn't catch on in Mecca at the time. Again, the chief deity of the Arabs, and the family, they are not interested. So he is run out of town, or at least encouraged to leave. Actually, the tribes come together and say, hey, listen, and go to his uncle and say, you need to make your nephew get out of town. And so the uncle says, hey, listen, this is bad for business, and you're kind of upsetting the apple cart here. Can't you just take your family and go out to the desert? And so he does. He leaves. He ends up, and this is called the Hijr. It is the transfer or the flight to Mecca. It's called, the flight from Mecca to Medina. Okay. Yorith is the original name, but it's then changed to Medina. What's interesting about this is actually they are invited by the Jews. There's another town that Muhammad tries to go to that's a little closer to Mecca, and they're going, no, we've heard about you, we're not interested. And so Medina is a little further off. And because Muhammad speaks of a one God, he's kind of welcomed. But soon he kind of runs afoul of them because he thinks, well, I'm going to come here and these Jews may think I'm a Messiah type, I am a prophet, and they should listen to me, and we'll kind of come together on this. Soon the Jews, being the way they are, meaning the tradition that they have, don't accept him and say, well, we'll change our traditions because you're a new prophet. That's not saying anything negative about the Jews. That's the history of the Jews. Go back and read any of the prophets. Pretty much every time a prophet comes up, the Jews as a whole end up saying, we've heard this all before. You're one of those prophets, Elijah. You're one of those prophets, Jeremiah. One of those prophets, Isaiah. So the Jews have a hard time listening to the prophets, even though they should have listened to the prophets, at least if you believe in the Judeo-Christian background. So this transition, this flight, happens in 622. This is the beginning of the Islamic calendar. So if you were to go to any Islamic state, they don't run on the Judeo-Christian calendar that we run on. Okay, they have their own calendar. They have their own months. Okay, so this is the beginning of that calendar. He creates the Ummah, which is the Islamic community. The idea of we take care of one another. We are bigger than just my belief. It is a shared community. Okay? They are welcomed in the beginning, and when I say then they are resisted because soon the majority of the Jewish population of Medina starts to say, well, we like your whole idea of one God because we believe in Yahweh, the one God, but we don't like some of these other things that you're talking about. And so they kind of become at odds. But soon, because the population in Medina is fairly poor and he has some that come with him, soon he becomes in complete control of Medina and becomes a theocracy, meaning a government run by a religion. Okay, he is both priest and king, as one might say. He probably wouldn't call himself a king, but he was the priestly leader. Muhammad's return to Mecca. In 630, he attacks Mecca. This is where the term jihad comes from. You hear about jihad, okay, which is holy war. Okay, well, this is the beginning of the idea of jihad. He decides to attack Mecca. Mecca converts to Islam. The destruction of the pagan sites takes place. It's replaced by a mosque. The Kaaba is preserved in honor of the importance of Mecca, and it becomes a pilgrimage site. Basically, Muhammad comes in and says, this is an important site to all of Arabs, and we're not going to just tear it completely down. We'll just take out these statues, or we'll use them differently. Actually, there's a place now there where you walk around it. It's really neat. I'll show you a picture over here in a second. But you walk around it. Millions of people walk around in a year. But there's also these figures that are there that you throw stones at because they're thought as evil. Okay, it's part of the religious experience there. Okay, so instead of just saying, well, this Kaaba stuff is a bunch of hooey, he ends up co-opting it and using it in his own religion. Okay, jihad. It's holy war against Mecca. It's a 10-year blockade, and then a deal was made. Okay, a deal was made. A deal was made between Muhammad and the Medinians, and the Meccans, and this is the deal. Mecca is preserved as a holy city and a place of pilgrimage. So he doesn't go in and just absolutely wipe it out. Most of the time when you have war, you go in and you wipe it out. But he doesn't do that. Why? Because he realizes the economic prosperity. He probably thinks back and says, wait a second now, if I go in there and just destroy Mecca, I'm coming from Medina, which isn't the wealthiest place in the world. If I go over here and destroy Mecca, I'm pretty much cutting off my nose to spite my face. This is where all the trade is coming from. This is the connection to the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire. Why would I want to burn down the place that actually creates some wealth? So he ends up saying, we won't do that. You guys just have to convert. And in converting, we're going to preserve the central site. We're going to take out the idols and destroy the icons. And we're going to emphasize Abraham and his role in this whole monotheistic and connection to the new faith. And the pilgrimage becomes an act of faith that happens once a year. So now, a good Muslim, if they have the means, and we'll talk about this, if they have the means, is supposed to go to Mecca and pilgrimage as part of their faith. This is the Black Rock. These are Muslims that literally walk around it. Every year, people are crushed because there's so many people. They trip and fall, and they're stampeded. It's unreal. But this is one of the holiest places in all of Islam. And millions of people go there every year. All right, so again, we talked about this, so we'll go through this one pretty quickly. There's the Quran. The Quran contains much of Muhammad's recounting of his teachings. It's written down by his followers after his death. Okay, it's short. There's only 114 chapters. Okay, and it is the way it is written. It goes from the longest chapter to the shortest chapter. It is not by subject. It is not by. It's not organized chronologically. It is organized based on the length of text. So I guess they wrote down the longest one, said this is the first, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Okay, but the Quran to a Muslim is an extremely holy artifact. Okay, so who grew up in the church, or at least around it? Okay, so you've seen a Bible. Okay, is it encased in glass? Is it protected? Is it anywhere special? It could be on a coffee table, it could be on a bedside table, it could be on the floor. I mean, if you were reading on the couch, you put it down because you fell asleep or whatever. You would never see a Muslim put the Quran on the floor. You would never see them leave it just out and about. You would never see one dog ear the Quran. Okay? To them, the Quran is as holy as the words that are in it, in a sense. So they treat it differently. Christians have a tendency to look at the Bible and say, this is the Word of God, but this is a book. It's about the meaning of the words. But if something happens to this physical book, that's not the end of the world, because it's not. God's not in the paper. It's in the understanding. For them, it's both the understanding and the paper. I mean, if you were to burn a Quran, you've probably seen some reports of people in the States doing that as an expression of freedom of speech. That's a very good way to have somebody come do something very bad to you. Okay? They are very serious about that. So it's important to know that, because it's not held in the same esteem as the Bible. It's held in a higher esteem than even the Bible to Muslims. Okay? There are some similarities to the Christian faith. There are some stories that you will find in the New and Old Testament that are in the Quran. Okay? So does that mean that they're true? It probably means that Muhammad, being in contact and listening to these Jewish people that he came into contact and listening to these Christians, heard the same stories and then wrote them down or shared them as part of his revelation. Okay, but that's why there are some similarities. But sometimes the stories can be told a little differently, kind of a little tilt to it. And think of telephone. You tell him a story, and then you tell me a story, then I tell him a story. By the time he gets to him, the story's changed a little bit. Okay, he talks in fables, in parables. Okay, it talks about politics again, and there are non-religious subjects, not dissimilar from the Jewish and Christian scriptures in many, many ways. All right, so these are the 5 pillars of Islam. Okay, these are important, guaranteed to be on the test. Okay. The uniqueness of God. Okay? The first and foremost thing to be a Muslim, you have to say there's only one God and Muhammad's his prophet. That's like number one. Okay, then beyond that, that's the conversion. Then you have to pray 5 times a day. You typically have a mat, you face Mecca, and you pray to Mecca. Actually, in the beginning, when they were in Medina and he was around the Jews, they actually prayed to Jerusalem. But once they ran afoul of each other, they changed it back to praying toward Mecca. Okay? You have to observe the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is the holy month in Islam. You fast. The idea of fasting is not you don't eat or drink for a month, but you do not eat or drink during the daylight. Okay? So the day, if the sun is up, you're not eating or drinking. Okay? You also don't do other things. If you smoke, you don't smoke. You abstain from things that are not good for the body, and then also you fast food and drink. Okay? So that's the whole idea. You are to become pure in the month of Ramadan. Okay? You are also to give money to the poor. It's kind of like the tithe. You hear the tithe in the church, they have their own version of the tithe. Theirs is much more direct than the Christian tithe. If we were all Muslims and I was a Muslim of means and you were not, I might come to you specifically and say, I want to give you this money because I know of your situation. and I would give it directly to you. I wouldn't give it to the mosque, then to you. Okay? In the church, in the Christian church, the church is the conduit by which most people give. Okay? And that has waned, ebbed and flowed through time. But they do give alms to the poor, but it's a much more direct, like I'm supposed to be in a relationship with you and give to you directly. And then the last is the pilgrimage. Now, the pilgrimage is not required, but it is something that they push. And it's because it's a connection back to the origin of Islam. Okay? So it doesn't mean you have to be an Arab to do that. You think of people like Malcolm X, who went on the Hajj back to Mecca. Okay? He was an African American that became part of the Nation of Islam in our country. And because he believed in the tenements of the Islamic faith, he actually made that trip. So if you are able to, or you can afford to, you are supposed to make that trip. Okay? But it's not like you won't get into heaven in their terms if you don't make it, because you may be in a station where you just can't afford it, or you can't make it. Okay? There are additional teachings. There were dietary laws. You are not to gamble. You're not to drink. No sexual irregularities made by the customs of that time. If you know anything about the Islamic faith, if you know anything about countries that are dominated by the Islamic faith, they are extremely harsh toward non-traditional sexual norms. Just put it that way. I don't have to go into too much detail, but if they know that you are not of that sexual norm, they may kill you. That is roundly done, especially in the more extreme Islamic countries. Now, does that mean that every person who is a Muslim believes that? No more than every Christian believes something to that effect. Okay, but again, it just depends on the fervor of the individual or of the institution, depending on where you are around the country, around the world. Okay, they do not believe in fault, waste, or usury. What they mean by that is that you can't cheat. Okay, no cheating. If this weighs this much in gold and you get this much product, it's got to be fair. I can't cheat you out of stuff. But it also means I can't say, hey, you need some money, I'll give you $100 and I'm going to charge you 50% interest. That's usury. Okay? They said that's wrong. You're taking advantage of someone else's situation. So they don't believe in usury. They don't believe in killing infants, specifically girls. Okay? So back then they didn't realize this. Okay? And we'll get to this in a second. But it's in the next slide. All right. So they had elaborate rules of inheritance and property. So they were trying to bring order to an orderless society. And they actually improved the status of women and children, which is interesting because you think today that if you were a woman, you don't want to be in an Islamic country, but it's more of a protectorate idea. Okay? So prior to Islam in that area, if you were a woman and you did not have a man, you were out of luck. Okay? You could have property. You would have to do horrible, horrible things just to get by. Period. Okay? When Muhammad came along, he said, listen, and probably because his wife was a widow, okay, and had been widowed twice over, he said, it is not right for women to have to depend on just their husband to be taken care of, because what if something happens to them? It happens all the time. We should take care of our women and children. We should be protective of them. That doesn't mean we should give them the equal rights. That's the caveat. It's more of a I own you, protect you, but not equal. You're not equal to a man. Okay? So it doesn't quite go that far. But when we talk about the killing of infants, okay, so it improves the status of women by saying outlaws the killing of women. Prior to Islam in this group, it was okay to say, back then there wasn't really contraceptive to a certain degree. I mean, you just had kids when you had kids. They really weren't sure exactly how it happened, but it happened pretty frequently because there wasn't anything to stop it. Okay? Because what creates that hasn't changed. So, in that happening, when you had a male, you were like, yes! Not because you thought they're going to be a star quarterback of the football team, but because you said, he's a male. He will be able to do a certain amount of work. He will be able to have status and do trade, and he will be fine in the social norm. A female, short of being married, and what came from that, was another mouth to feed. So if I was wealthy and I had a girl, no problem. Another mouth to feed. That's fine. I make plenty of money. But if I'm poor and I have a female. And I already have 3 other females because for some reason, I just throw an X chromosome. So no matter what, I'm going to have 100 kids. I'm going to have girls. At some point in time, those that were in a certain station would say, I cannot afford to have any more girls, and they would kill them. Just kill them. Muhammad said, no, that's not right. They are children of God. We cannot kill them. We should not kill them just because they may not be able to do as much work as a boy or be self-sufficient as a boy. They're God's children. We should take care of them. Okay? Yet, the males stay dominant, and this is still today. Okay? Polygamy is permitted. What is polygamy? More than one wife. What is this? Can't have more than one husband. Okay? So that's why it's not necessarily fair. Didn't say their station in life got better. They didn't have a fair lot in life. 2 different things. Okay? So we talked about some of the similarities. We'll go through this quickly. Monotheistic, we talked about. Insist on responsibility of human beings, meaning it's more than just I'm going to get mine or I'm going to survive or I'm going to if I'm stronger than you, I can just take your stuff. I mean that's pre-Christian, pre-Judaism, pre-Islam. The whole idea was if I'm bigger than you, bash you over the head and take your stuff. Okay? Now it's more of if I bash you over the head, that's murder. So if I murder you, I go to hell. Because there's a certain morality that I'm supposed to... It doesn't matter I'm 5 times stronger than you. I'm still don't need to bash your head in. Okay, so these are the things that are very similar. Final judgment, rewards, the practices of virtue that you can be the best version of you. That comes from... Because instead of just being fearful of the sun god or the nature god or the god of the earth, things like that, it's more of I want to please the one God. It's more of a relationship. So it's instead of just, prior to monotheism, people just lived in fear. And they just felt like, the gods just get angry and bad stuff happens. They started thinking, maybe it's not that way. Maybe it's bad things happen because I do bad things. Maybe if I live better, things will be better. I'll be pleasing to God, not in a, I get in trouble kind of way, but live the best kind of life kind of way. Differences. An emphasis on compassion and mercy. There was an emphasis on compassion and mercy in Christianity and Judaism, but they took it to another level in Islam early on. Okay? So there was a great compassion, great mercy. The giving of alms was moderate, but it was direct. Heaven is definitely different. Okay? Heaven comes at the end in judgment. Not so much the whole idea of everlasting life per se, but it's a different concept of heaven. There's still heaven, but it's a different concept. There are no priests or sacramental systems. You have the sacraments in Christianity. You have priests in Judaism and priests in Christianity. There weren't any in early Islam. Now you have mullahs and leaders, the imams, and leaders of the mosque. So it's kind of created that, but in the beginning it was very different. Okay, and the conversion is very simple. Okay, if you say these words and you mean it, you're a Muslim. Now, once you become Muslim, you're supposed to do certain things, but that's all it takes. Okay, so the question might be, what is this? Is this? That's the conversion kind of test question. Those types of things. Just to give you an example of what might be on the test. Okay? So, Islamic law, you've heard of Sharia law, codification of Islamic law. Basically, Sharia law is based on the Quran, the Hadith, and logical schools of analysis. Extends beyond ritual laws to areas of human activity. This is the basis of the Islamic Republic. If you talk about Iran, Sharia law is basically codifying and saying if we were going to run a country, this is what's right and wrong. Okay. The problem with Sharia law is it also takes into effect of how do you train people to do the right thing. Okay, so everything is in terms of perspective. Do you know what country has more prisons than anywhere else in the world? What country in the world has the most prisons?
Is it us?
It is us. Doesn't that sound horrible? We have more prisons and spend more on prisons than any other country in the world. Why is it then? Is it because Americans are bad? We have lots of bad people? Why do we spend so much on prison? What's the idea of prison?
Keep people from doing wrong.
Okay, so people have done wrong, and we want to keep them from doing wrong. But what else do we try to do in a prison?
Teach them not to do wrong.
Teach them not to do wrong. It's the idea of a civilized culture that says we're going to reform this person. That doesn't really work very well because when they get out, they tend to be bigger, stronger, and still violent. Or still, okay, so we haven't figured it out. But the idea of prison is to try to help people who do bad things to come out and not do bad things anymore. Okay, to stop them from doing bad things. You know what the price under Sharia law is for stealing?
It's like you get your hand cut off.
Get your hand cut off. So they say you stole, you're right-handed, but cut your right hand off. It keeps you from stealing because it's taking your dominant hand away. And everybody will know that what?
You're a thief.
You're a thief. So I'm going to watch you because you might try to steal with your other hand. Okay? So, now, granted, did people steal much? When this happens, people stop stealing. Okay, to a certain degree. But is it humane? Is there forgiveness in that? There's pros and cons. Okay? As long as you don't plan on stealing anything, you might not have a problem with it. Okay, but that's just one example of Sharia law. Okay, so you got to understand, draw a hard line. Be hard line and make people better. But where does grace and forgiveness come into that? Where does trying to teach come into that? I don't know. It's a difficult situation. It's easy to have Sharia law and push it out when you're in charge. But what if you're not? Then it becomes different. Okay. So the expansion of Islam. Why did it expand? It expanded, like wildfire. Okay? There's some reasons. One, early victories. Okay? Second, backsliders. How many of you grew up Baptist? If you're in the South, it's predominant. Okay? Baptist. You've heard of a backslider?
Mm-hmm.
You never heard of a backslider? Okay. A backslider is someone who, especially you hear of it in Baptist circles more so. If you're a Baptist, you're baptized. You're dunked in the water. And all that kind of stuff. Well, the idea of backsliding is that I'm forgiven and I've accepted, but then I start doing things I'm not supposed to do, and you slide back into sin. Okay, that's the idea.
Yeah,
okay?
I just never heard it called that.
Never heard it called that. Okay, that's the idea of backsliding or a backslider. Well, in Islam, if you were a backslider, meaning you were apostate, meaning you just stopped believing, you stopped doing what you're supposed to do, well, that's treason. They put you to death in Sharia law. Okay, so once you became a Muslim, you're a Muslim. You don't go back from it, because if you stop being a Muslim, they kill you. At least that's the way it was back then. Okay. So beyond the fervor, beyond the I'm all in kind of mentality of early Islam, you also have two very sick empires. What I mean by that is these two have been fighting for 100 years. And they're both like two old boxers that are just flailing at each other. And they're just, it's like Mike Tyson walks in the ring, or Conor McGregor walks in the ring, or Mayfield walks into these two guys that have been fighting for 100 years and just goes, hey, you're done, and then walks over the other one. You're done, because they're done. They can't barely fight each other, and you have this young group that's powerful and gaining momentum, and they just walk all over. Okay? Basically, those two fight each other into oblivion, and then there's this vacuum that's left, and Muhammad and his followers and the people who follow him expanding. So this is the Byzantine Empire at the time, and this is the Persian Empire, okay? And this is the area that's controlled by Muhammad at his death. Okay? So, from this point in time, remember he dies in 632. From 632 to 750, so just a little over 100 years. Okay? The empire goes from just a small area to conquering all of this territory and all of this territory and this territory. Okay? By this time, by 1200, it's expanded to all of North Africa, and it eventually gets right to here. Then the Holy Roman Empire, or the Austrians, the Habsburgs, keep the Muslims from coming in. But at one point in time, within 100 years, they control more landmass than the Romans ever did. Okay? This is the Dome of the Rock. This is supposedly where Muhammad went and was carried up to heaven on a white stallion. That's why it's the most famous, one of the famous spots, and why the Jews and the Muslims can't get along, because they both want control of this spot. Okay? Again, we talked about the victories. They went in Syria. They went in Palestine. They defeat the Persians in one battle, and by doing that, they get the entire Persian Empire, which goes from basically right up to the Byzantine Empire all the way over to India in one battle. They expand all the way to the borders of China. Okay? They take Egypt with the help of the Christians, and they take North Africa because of the Berbers. And they get along very well with the Berbers because the Berbers are nomadic tribesmen of North Africa, similar to the tribesmen of Arabia. Here's the other reason. Islam spreads. Well, he's just beyond the reason we'll get to that. They get all the way to Spain by 720. Battle Tutors, 720. That is Charles Manuel. He basically, if you don't have this guy, he's a Frank. Okay, he is the father of Charlemagne. Okay, he stops them from taking over all of Europe. If he doesn't win the Battle of Tutors, Islam takes all of Europe. Okay. They siege Constantinople, but Pope Leo III is able to hold them back. Uses the Greek fire. Okay. But again, they start taking over the rotten remains of the Roman Empire. Okay. Reasons for their success, we talked about that. The Romans and the Persians have been fighting. They've been fighting for 400 years, but it got ugly in the last 100. Okay, the last 100, they're basically just sapping the energy out of each other. There's a national sentiment in Egypt and in Syria. There are lots of Arabs there, and they relate well to the Arabs that are coming from Arabia. There are arguments among the Christian factions. Kind of like even here in the United States. How many different denominations are there? There's Methodist, there's Presbyterian, there's Southern Baptist, there's Baptist, there's Holiness, there's all kinds. Well, back then there were lots of Christian factions, and because they all didn't come together under one, you had the Orthodox Church, then you had the Roman Church, two separate churches, both Christian, but very, very different. Because they couldn't get on the same page, they got run over. The Muslim armies were known for being on horseback. You've seen the pictures of one with the big sickle typed symbol and the swords. Okay, they were known for their lightning fast attack because they were very fast. They were Bedouins. They knew how to go across long desert stretches without a problem. Okay, but there's two big pieces of this that I want you to understand. Okay, their faith was very simple. It was not overly complicated, so it was easy to tell people. And because it was easy to tell people, some people were like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe I want to be Muslim. I mean, being a Jew is complicated. There's a lot of rules. There really aren't. There's 10. But they took them from 10 and made thousands of them. And by the time this time, if you're a Jew, if your cart fell into the ditch and it was the Sabbath, you're supposed to leave it in the ditch. you're not supposed to brush your hair on Sunday, on the Sabbath day, because that's too much like work. That's complicated. So am I breaking the rules? Am I not breaking the rules? Remember, what does it take to convert?
The Shadaha.
The Shadaha. One statement. That's all it takes. And then, pray 5 times a day. Okay, I can do that. I mean, it's very simple. Okay? Compared to, by this time, the Holy Roman, the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, they became very complex. In fact, at the time, most Christians said, I can't even speak to God. Why? Because I don't speak Latin or can't read Latin. So only my pastor can talk to God. This is very easy. So it's very trendy. The second thing is they accept the Old Testament, New Testament people. They look at Jews and Christians and say, these are people of the book. We won't put them to death. We won't even make them convert to Islam. They basically walked into areas that had Jews and Christians and said, we're okay with you. Abraham, Father Abraham, we like him. He's in our book too. They said, and so because they said that and they got along, people were like, well, these guys aren't so bad. These other people, I can't stand them. They were ugly to us. These guys aren't so bad. So people were like, do you want us to rule or do you want your own? Oh, no, y'all come on in. So that's why it spread so quickly, because they had a really good message, it was very simple, and they were good to people. They were very tolerant. They were very tolerant, which was unusual at this time in the world. Okay, the consequences of the expansion. Okay, so they lost the oldest and most central lands of Christendom. Okay, aid the ascendancy of the Bishop of Rome. So because of this expansion, there's loss of Christendom land, but you have Rome become stronger, honestly, because of it, because they retract into Rome. So Rome starts to grow into the Middle Ages. So the Bishop of Rome becomes the Pope. Okay? Because of the expansion, Zoroastrianism dies. Virtually dies. Okay? Because once they take over Persia, they don't look at the Zoroastrians and say, you're people of the book. They go, you're a pagan. You become Islam, you become a Muslim, or die. Now you're a Jew, they go, hey, Father Abraham and big son, we're good with you. You're a Zoroastrian, become a Muslim or die. So when they took over Persia, after that one battle and they got all those lands, they looked at all the Zoroastrians and said, so you want to be put to death? Or do you want to become a Muslim? They all became Muslims. Okay? It radically altered the balance of power between the Roman Empire in the East and the West. All the power was left in the East, but the East started to dwindle. Once Charles Mantle and Charlemagne come to power, you have the ascension of the Holy Roman Empire, and so the East starts to die. And then you have the emergence of the Middle Ages, and Christendom really moves back to Rome. Okay? And disrupts the Mediterranean economic community. For a while there, Dark Ages, if you're not traveling or have the permission of Islam, you're not making any money. Early problems. Okay, there were some problems in Islam. Succession. Muhammad had no male children. Remember, the guys are the only one that matter. Now, you're supposed to protect the girls, but when it comes to property, when it comes to who's in charge, if you're not a dude, you don't get to play. Okay? So he had no male children. So he did have a daughter, and she married a guy named Ali. Okay? And so there was one group who thought that Ali should be the next Muhammad, or the leader. Okay? The group that wanted to be with Ali are the Shia. Now there's two major groups in Islam. You need to know these groups. There are the Shia and there are the Sunni. Sunni. The Sunni are the ones that said there's Muhammad, there's the Quran, and there's the Hadith. What he said and how he lived his life. And that right there is what Islam is about. Okay? The Shia say there is the Quran and then there is the family of Muhammad. and they tie themselves to Ali and his line. Okay? That's why the Shia and the Sunni don't like each other. They really don't like each other. It's not like the Baptist and the Methodist. Okay? They really don't like each other. Because, you see, the Sunni say, you're believing in these people and your beliefs are wrong. And the Shia say, we're descendants of Muhammad, and so we are the true believers of Islam and carriers of Islam, and you believing in the hadith and this other stuff, that's heresy. Now, there's very, very different ideas there. The Sunni consider themselves orthodox. They are followers of Muhammad and his thoughts, period. Okay? They consider the Shia deserters. Okay? They're the ones that left the faith to follow people. Granted, those people were family of Muhammad, but the issue is who leads after Muhammad. This is where you have the idea of the caliphate. The caliph is the leader. You've heard of the caliphate, ISIS and their caliphate. Okay, the caliphate is the territory controlled by a caliph. The caliph is the leader. Okay, it went successfully to followers: Abu Bakr, okay, then to Uthman, and then to Uthman. Okay, so these are people who were believers and took on what Muhammad said. And said, I'm here to run his empire. I'm not Muhammad, but I know what he wanted, and so I'm going to help run the empire. So these are like his close allies, his close followers. Okay? The Shia, they disagree over the selection of the caliph. They believe that Ali was passed over by Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, when Muhammad died, says, I was his most trusted advisor. I am the next. And Ali says, wait a second, that's my uncle. Or my uncle-in-law. I should be next. Okay? Ali serves as caliphate for 5 years and then is assassinated along with most of his followers. Okay? The remaining followers organize a separate party called Shia. Okay? The traditionalists are the Sunni. So the Sunni population is the largest population in Islam. Okay? The Shia is a very small population in Islam. Abu Bakr, he was not popular. Okay? But he allowed raids and then invasions of the Byzantine and the Persian territory. So he said, you know, it's okay. We're going to push into those two old men, these two dying empires. He subjugated dissident elements or tribes. So if they said, you know, if you're not with us, you're against us. And he deposed any new prophets. Abu Bakr gets a bad rap, but he is the one that cements Muhammad as the only prophet. After Muhammad dies, there were others that try to rise up and say, well, I speak to God too. And he goes, nope. Off of your head. He basically says there's no one but Muhammad. He is the guy that makes it all come together. He gets a bad rap for it, though, because he was a pretty brutal guy. Okay? Success equals strain. Now, here's the problem. All great empires fall. This is my biggest worry about the American empire, is that all great societies, all great empires fall. And so they had great success, but it equals strain. The success introduces luxury and change. So remember, the tenets of the beginning of the religion is that everybody can help their station in life. They can become better than they are now. Okay? And there should be some equality. But then when you have the people at the top making lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money and become sultans and things like that, it starts to introduce a different factor. Okay? From the original caliphs, you then have the Umayyads Caliph. This is the first big group that take control, right? And then you have new ideas, a new ethnic group with their own customs, their own heritage, and they try to assimilate. Okay? So this is a group that's not necessarily a part of the original, but they come into control. And then you have the rise of a sort of revitalized element. Islam had strayed from its original path and purity, and the Muslims were being led back to paganism, so the caliphs became idle, corrupt, and tyrants. So they're turned, at the beginning when it was spreading really fast, they were like, oh, you're okay, you're people of the book, and you're people of the book, and we're fine, and we're doing good. And then as things started to go wrong, they said, wait a second, we got to get back to, if you're a Muslim, you must be from Arabia. If you're a citizen, you must be from Arabia. And so they started to subjugate, and they started to take control of their outlying areas, not treating them fairly anymore, not being what they were originally. They started to run it like an empire. Because they said, well, those people who are back on the Arabian Peninsula, they're the real Muslims. And so we need to have the taxation go back to the home area. And so we're going to squeeze the outer territories. It was far from the original spread of, but this is simple, and you're all nice to us, and we're better than these other folks. And you see how it starts to change. When they started to kind of pull it back in, think of it as the body becomes dehydrated. As things became corrupt, what happens to the body when it dehydrates? Your limbs start to kind of curl in. If you've ever been really dehydrated, you start to kind of curl up a little bit. Okay? Your limbs do. Well, that's what was happening. Islam was starting to contract and bringing all the resources back to the Arabian Peninsula, which the more it contracted, the more it squeezed its outer elements or their outer arms, and it started to cause strain on the empire. The people started to hate them because all the wealth was going back to Arabia. Okay? Uthman was the third caliph. He murdered and warfare broke out. Ali's cousin, son-in-law Muhammad, they fought. Originally passed over. We talked about this. And Uthman was supported by the Umayyadan clans, and this is the early enemy of Muhammad, and refused to accept Ali's claim, and so they actually murder Ali. So Uthman is the one that murders Ali. Doesn't kill his movement, still Shia out there, but this is where it goes from the original idea to a empire dominating people. Uthman is the one that brings about the controlling Islam empire. Okay, so the Umayyads, they're successful in war. They kill, we talked about this, they kill Ali in 61 AD, right? And it begins the dynasty. Policy toward conquered people, favoritism of Arab. This is what I was telling you, okay? So once you get to the Umayyads, okay, if you're not Arab, you're not special anymore. And what did Arab mean? Arab meant that you're not from Arabia. Okay? So limited social mobility for non-Arab Muslims. So it wasn't that you just had to be Muslim now. You could convert to Islam and say, I say the Shahadat and I'm Muslim now. I believe in Islam, but I'm not Arab. I said, well, it's great that you believe in Islam. Blessed be Allah, but you're not an Arab. So you're a second-rate Muslim. You are not like the special ones that live in Arabia. Okay? And non-Muslims started to have to pay the jizya. The jizya was a tax. So before, when they said, you're people of the book, oh, remember Father Abraham and many sons, and you guys are some of the sons, and you guys are some of the sons. But now, I'm going to need you to pony up some money. Because I'm going to let you still be a Jew, or I'm going to let you still be a Christian. But if you're going to do that, I'm going to need you to pay up. Again, why do they do that? Because you have the decline of the moral authority. Because of the luxury that these controlling empire had, because they wanted to have the big palaces and have the money and have the wealth, they started to compromise their moral authority. Remember, when it expanded, and it was expanding at a great rate, it was expanding because people looked at him and said, these are good people. They don't want to hurt us. They're not bad. And they let me still believe in what I believe. Why not? They say I'm people of the book. These are our Muslim brothers. Now these are our Muslim overlords. And they're taking my money. Okay? So it's changing. They've compromised their morality. Okay? Let me talk about this. So the Sunnis are the ones, they're the traditionalists. Okay? We talked about that. We talked about the Shias. Okay? The Sunni and Shias are the two dominant. We've talked about that. The Shias become a religious descent. We've talked about that. Okay, so the perception. Sunnis are conservative. They're in favor of the status quo. Okay? The Shias are defenders of the oppressed. So the Shia are the ones that tend to radicalize because they tend to say, well, the people who are in power, the traditionalists, they're just trying to keep things the same. They're trying to keep you down. You're a young Muslim and you should rise up. You should be a part of. We're going to rage against the machine here of Islam that's controlled by the Sunni. There should be a new order of Islam. They tend to grow out of the Shia group because they feel as though they are defenders of the oppressed. Okay? So, at the expanse of the Umayyadan Empire, it went from the Atlantic Ocean, meaning the tip of Africa, all the way to India. Okay? And Syria was the Damascus area was the center of the Islamic world. Okay? The Umayyads are eventually displaced by the Abbasians. Okay? An Arab family claiming descent from Muhammad are the Abbasians. And they basically take over. Okay? The Abbasid Empire goes from 750 to 1258 CE. Basically right up to the Ottomans. Okay? After the Abbasians, we get toward the Ottomans. Okay? So you have the Abu Abbas Sunni Arabs. They're allied with the Shia non-Arab Muslims. So basically the Arab Muslims are so oppressive, they've been picking on some people too much, taking too much of money, that the non-Arab Muslims say, wait a second, we are the true people of Islam and we're going to rise up. They seize control of Mesopotamia and Persia. These are areas outside of the Arab or the Arabian Peninsula, and they defeat the Umayyads in 750. They invite the Umayyads to a banquet. They say, let's sit down, let's talk this over. And they murder them all. So if your partner or your enemy ever says, come eat dinner, say, no thanks. It's probably a trap. Okay? The only Umayyads that remain are left in Spain, the farthest expanse of the empire. North Africa is a disputed territory between the two. Okay, so the nature of the Abbasian is diverse in nature. It's not exclusively Arab. Remember, in the Umayyads, they said if you're an Arab, you get power. You get to be in control. If you're an Abbasian or Abbasid, you share the power. You say you don't have to be from Arabia. You just have to be Muslim. It's okay. They're very militarily competent. Okay? And they're not bent on imperial expansion. They're not looking to take more over to bring in the money. Okay? The luxury. So kind of the Dar Islam, meaning kind of all are Islam. Okay, kind of the Pax Romana. You've heard of Pax Romana? Meaning that everyone was Roman. In the Roman Empire at its height, if it was called Pax Romana, it means all Romans were citizens and it was for the good of Rome. They kind of had the Pax Romana idea of Islam is good for all. Okay? The growth through military activity and autonomous Islamic forces. So they gave autonomy to their areas, to their different segments. They said, we're not going to lord over you and sap out your funds and sap out your taxes. We're going to let you kind of do your thing. Okay? We talked about these things already. All right? So the Caliph of Al-Rashid, okay, the high point of the Abbasian Empire. So this is the ultimate of the power. The center is Baghdad, and it's the center of their commerce, and it's great cultural activity. This is when there's great learning in medicine and math. Okay, this is the height of this caliph. Okay, is the height of the Abbasid dynasty is Al-Rashid. Now the decline. Like most empires, they start to decline when you have more than one son. And they start fighting over the empire. This is what happens here. Al-Rashid dies. He has multiple sons, and they start fighting over the empire. No, I want to be king. No, I want to be king. It's no different than kids fighting at home. Okay? So provincial governors assert regional independence. They start to break away. They say, wait a second, those two guys are fighting, and I'm all the way over here. I'm just going to stop sending my tax money. I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm just going to create the Caliph of Oldham. We broke away from you. Now it's our own Caliph. What are you going to do about it? You're too busy fighting amongst each other. Okay? So it starts to pull apart. You have dissenting sects, you need different groups, okay? And hierarchical movements. The basic caliphs become puppets of Persian nobility, okay? And later, the Turks, and the Sultan has the real power behind the throne. This is when you start to see the Ottomans come to bear. Okay? The formation of an Islamic cultural tradition. Okay? So the uniformity of Islamic law is the Dar al-Islam. So there is the idea of one Islam, and these are the rules. Okay? The establishment of the madrasas and the importance of the hajjaj. Madrasas are the ruling class. And you also have the hajjaj, which is the actual pilgrimage to Mecca. You know, Sufi monasteries or missionaries. There are some tensions between the Orthodox ideologies, but it becomes widely popular. This culture becomes widely popular. In the beginning, the aesthetics just wanted it to be pure. No luxury. We just need to share everything, commune with everyone. I shouldn't have more than you. I should take care of you. You should take care of me. Very simple. And then after that, you're like, well, this is simple and nice, but people keep giving me stuff and they're listening to me, and I've got some influence, and so I start wanting more things. And then there's the idea of mysticism. That mysticism is the idea that there's certain power in things or importance in things. Instead of it just being about the simplicity, there starts to become the idea of the mystical or the beyond man is the idea. So it starts to have some mystical elements to it. So cultural influences on Islam, obviously the Persians. From the Persians, because they took over the Persians, they learned the idea of administration and governance and literature. From India, they learned mathematics, science, and medicine. Okay? They used Hindi numbers. And from the Greeks, they learned philosophy and medicine. So what's interesting is, right up to the Dark Ages in Europe, all of the learning is happening in the Islamic world. Okay? Well, not all the learning. There's a lot of learning going on in China. Okay, in the East. It's different, but it's still there. But all the modern learning they had at the time was kind of encompassed in the Islamic world, and they took great advantage of it. In fact, probably most of the United States could survive without one of the things that came from there, which is coffee. They came up with coffee, or modernized it. Okay? So the whole idea here is that it spread ideas throughout the Muslim world. Much the same as Rome, much the same as Alexander. These cultural importance brought ideas all the way from India and brought them all the way to Spain. And so you had this transition and reintroduction of learning in Europe. At this point in time, Europe is backwards. Have you ever seen Monty Python? Okay, if you haven't, go rent it. There's old British guys that do humor, and it's funny, and it kind of depicts the medieval world. as backwards as it is. It's a spoof, but it's worth watching. But it is backwards. I mean, it's in the Dark Ages. Okay, and this is before the Renaissance. The Renaissance doesn't happen without Islam and the spread of Islam and the Islamic empires at the time. If Rome dies and the Byzantine Empire dies and everything else goes away, you do not have the Renaissance. You do not have the emergence of the Western world and its power. Because all the stuff that we remember from the great age of the Hellenistic and everything that was learned at the time comes from the Islamic world. Because Europe was in the Dark Ages. They were in the dark. Okay? So, and that means
That's a good song.
it is a very good song. All right. Let's see. Oh, that was it. Look at that. All right. So it's perfect timing. So I will post an assignment tomorrow. So look in week 3, and I will open up week 4.